Brad has been at this for about 6 months now, and he explained to me what happened at a recent celebration. It was a St. Patrick's Day celebration at a local Irish establishment. Ordinarily, Brad would have gotten pretty drunk. This time, however, was very different. First of all, he took the time to listen to his tapes while he was sitting in the parking lot before ever stepping foot in the bar. He was there for about 4 hours, and over that time he paced himself with 5 beers and 1 shot. He was offered more shots, of course, but after he took the one, he was able to say no to the rest. It was getting close to midnight, and Brad realized, hey, I got to work in the morning. Ordinarily, by midnight, he would have been saying screw it, and would have carried on until he was quite intoxicated and they closed the place down. Only this time, he quietly slipped out to his car, measured his breath alcohol. He was at .05, so he decided, yeah, it's time to go. When Brad talked to his buddies the next day, he realized that nobody even noticed he left. He also noticed how great he felt. This has started to become standard fare for Brad. He realizes that he still has work to do on what he calls his pace, however. Having 5 beers and a shot over the course of 4 hours is still faster than the pace he wants, but he's getting better at it little by little. Brad himself surmised that at the pace he was going that night, if it had been an all-day event, he probably would have exceeded .08. But, as I reminded Brad, learning to do this is like improving one's batting average. I reminded Brad that leaving the party at .05 was a very responsible choice. Brad admitted he was actually beginning to really like drinking this way, and that it was far more fun to drink in kind of a controlled fashion. Spring is coming, and Brad knows that he's got more work to do when it comes to spending an entire day on the golf course or out on the boat on the lake, but he's optimistic, and he's excited about his new venture. Now, many experts would be quick to say that having 5 beers and a shot is not responsible drinking. I guess it all depends on how you look at it. From a legal perspective, Brad was acting in every way responsible. At .05, he was legally able to drive. He was being morally responsible to those around him. He was fully aware of everything that was happening. He forgot nothing. He did not say anything stupid, do anything stupid, or slur his words. No regrets. We could ask, was Brad being responsible to his own liver, his own body? That's debatable. Could anyone argue that 6 is not more responsible than 15 or 16? I don't think so. Could anyone argue that Brad is not well on his way to getting better at this? I don't think so. What Brad is learning to do right now is purely psychological. Brad is working on the psychological perspective of pacing himself in a drinking situation. Slowly but surely, his brain is adapting to this new perspective. He still hears his intention-killing thoughts launching in his head, but he's practiced his rational responses so often now that they're readily available. And, best of all, he's really beginning to like the feeling of being responsible. Brad has drunk to intoxication so many times that he had literally forgotten what it felt like to be at .05. Brad's beginning to see this as a perfect balance between having fun and acting responsibly. At .05, he has plenty of alcohol on board to feel a sense of relaxation. He's enjoyed plenty of beers by sipping and savoring them, and he's having a good time with his friends, and nobody's given him a hard time at all. Brad is starting to understand what it's really like to taste a beer, something he'd forgotten how to do. And he can't wait to see how much better his golf game's going to be. We're now about 6 months into this project, and Brad has come a long way. He's made his mistakes along the way, but at this point, more often than not, he's executing his intention, or at least getting close. Brad had a confession to make. He admitted to me that when I first suggested that he make these videos of himself, he thought it was ridiculous. I just smiled and nodded. I get that a lot. But now he understands. He went on to say that now he hears himself in his own head and literally sees his own image saying the things he wants to say in those situations. I kept smiling. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. Brad went on to say, I now have this new tape in my head, and I just push play every time I hear my brain trying to suggest something that could get me into trouble. It is so cool. And Brad had one more tidbit of information for me. His wife was becoming a believer. She had actually sought some counsel herself and had been told by her counselor that this thing that Brad was trying to do was just ridiculous. Abstinence was the only way. Oh, really? Let's check the facts. Out of all folks who attempt abstinence, 5% actually obtain it. That's pretty dismal. And those 5%, the ones I've met, have more than their share of problems. Their old friends are gone. Their hangouts are gone. Many don't go to parties or weddings because they just can't handle other people drinking responsibly. They can't watch it. It kills them to see somebody be able to have a few drinks and put it down. How do I know this? Simple. I've interviewed more than my fair share. They typically don't do that well in relationships. They're angry, depressed, sometimes loners. Not all, of course, but many. Brad doesn't have to contend with any of that. He can still do all the things he wants to do with all of the friends he wants to do it with. He actually gets a big kick now out of the stupid things that his friends say when they get drunk. He just shakes his head and remembers. And what about the 95% that don't make it with abstinence? Within 5 years, they're back to drinking as much or more than they ever did. Most of them go right back to ruining their relationships and their livers. Most feel like failures and just give up altogether. This is what happens when you make this whole drinking thing a pass-fail dichotomy. Most by far will fail. But not so with CBT, to teach responsible drinking. Most of my clients start doing better immediately and report less drinking, and less as time goes on and on. Not all stick with it, of course, but many do. Again, it takes the brain a while to assimilate this new program, many repetitions. Furthermore, there are a mounting number of research projects that support what I'm observing firsthand. Oh, and one more thing, just in case you haven't figured it out. I am Brad, literally, not just the avatar on the tape, but in real life too, through and through. Brad's story is actually a bit tame compared to my own, but that's a different story for a different day. I tell you this for one reason and one reason only. I absolutely know what I'm talking about. Scientifically, clinically, practically, and yes, personally. I couldn't imagine sitting at a Cubs game and not enjoying a Chicago dog and a few Budweisers, and thank God I will never have to.